Hi, and thank you for joining our congregational meeting. We do this every year at the conclusion of our fiscal year, which ends at the end of June. I'm Glenn Wishnu, Council Chair for our Saviours, and I'm glad you are joining this remote presentation. As done in previous meetings, we're going to cover three topics: missions, our budget, and capital projects. At the end, you will be asked to vote for approval of the budget. Instructions for approval will be given as part of the Zoom call. I want to offer a special note of thanks to all of you for your continued steadfast giving in the midst of these uncertain times. We appreciate it greatly. I want to also point out that the budget reflects what we believe to be a responsible plan for next year. But there is also a lot of uncertainty given the current COVID situation, and therefore we may need to adjust it in the coming year. We will certainly keep you all informed of any required adjustments. Our presenters today are as follows. Graham Brennan will be presenting on missions, Rick Liebeck will be presenting on our budget, and Jim Harms will be presenting on capital projects. After each presentation, there will be time for questions and answers. You may use a chat Zoom function or just ask the question live at the end of the presentation. Thank you for your attendance and attention to these presentations. A special thanks to Graham, Rick, and Jim for their presentations. Please remember to vote after the call is over, and thank you and God bless. Graham, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Graham Brenna. I'm the chair of the Mission and Benevolence Committee here at Our Saviours, and I've been in this role for about 3 years. Today, I'm going to take you through the Mission and Benevolence budget coming out of the overall operating budget for fiscal year 2020 through 2021. So here on my first slide, you'll see what our budget was last year versus this coming year. You'll see we've got about a 5% reduction. It's about a $9,000 reduction from where we were at last year. And that's just given the state of the world right now, given COVID-19, and expecting less money to come in overall. Of course, that may change throughout the year, but this is what we're planning on from a bit of a conservative plan for right now. So you can see the two pie graphs here show essentially where that money lands from a global and a local perspective, as well as obviously a large chunk of our budget is the synod gift each year that we give to our Chicago Metropolitan Synod. Here on slide 2, I just wanted to give a brief history of the synod gift and where we've been and kind of the history behind that. So as you can see, many synod congregations provide gifts to the synod for ministry through the wider church. Approximately 51% of those gifts received are distributed by the synod to ELCA related ministries or the ELCA congregations to support domestic and global efforts, including education, social services, and worship. So actually a large chunk of the money that we give to our synod goes directly to church-wide, is essentially what that's saying. So what we've done for this year, we've put it back to $108,000. That's where it was for 2018 through 2019. And so that's still roughly about almost a 7% gift out of our overall budget for the church. This next slide will show you a little bit more, just a breakdown of where we are globally, locally. So these are our missions and benevolences that we have kind of blessed, if you will. They've been a part of our congregation, part of our lives here for a while. Some of them new, some of them old. And so about $34,000 goes directly of this $171,000 that is budgeted from the operating budget. $34,000 of that goes to our local missions, and then about $27,000 goes to our global missions. A lot of these ministries as well raise their own money throughout the year. So this is just a picture for what it looks like out of the actual budget, which is what you're voting on today. I'm going to take you now through the additional financial picture for our missions and benevolences throughout the year. So this portion right here, these two slides basically show us where we're at and what you're voting on for the operating budget coming in through the church. So outside of that, on the next slide, you'll see kind of the cash flow and the carryover for each of those named missions and benevolences for each year. Some of these are not pictured just because they're strict benevolences. They don't hold an account within our accounting system. We don't hold cash for them. If we do give them money, it's just a direct gift out of undesignated. But a lot of these that you'll see do have members, people that are organizing events and sometimes trips and things of that nature for these individual missions and benevolences. So there's money that is held throughout the year and used for various things. So up at the top, you'll see the Fear Scholarship Fund. We had hoped to be able to send more people on trips this year, but obviously given the nature of things, that is a bit on hold at the moment. So what you'll see, that $15,000 just probably sitting there for the next year or so. But the goal will be to, once travel restrictions are lifted and some of these trips start getting rescheduled, you'll see that get spent fairly quickly. The rest of these pads, undesignated, garage sale, Feed My Starving Children, all of these that you can see here, all of these have cash coming in and then cash going out throughout the year. So this ending balance, this column on the right, is really what we're projecting will be their ending balance at the end of June, at the end of our fiscal year at 2020. Obviously, we haven't closed the books on June yet, and as of this recording, we haven't closed the books on May yet, but we did put in everything that we know is going to happen into these numbers. So this is a pretty accurate representation. The next slide here, you'll see just kind of those numbers broken out into another type of a forecast look. So this column that says general operating for fiscal year 2020 through 2021, that's the money that you're voting on to come out of the operating budget into mission and benevolences. Then this is this carry forward and other gifts. This is that $87,000 that is going to be carried over that we're projecting, plus any other gifts that we know tend to come in throughout the year for those groups, for a total of $385,000 as like our overall cash flow for the year for mission and benevolences. You can see how that's broken down: 38% for global, 16% spent locally, 28% spent on the synod, and then another 18% just in that other category. That other category is really the Linda Fuhrer Scholarship Fund. It's the undesignated fund. Those are really the heavy hitters. That money outside of the Fuhrer Scholarship is really targeted for disaster relief and things that may come up throughout the year that we're able to help with. The last slide that I have here is really just to give you a bit of a historical look at the combined ops budget carry forward and other gifts versus the general operating budget alone. So on the left, you'll see the general operating budget, that $171,000 that we're proposing this year. The unrestricted giving section, that is our overall, what is our projected, our budgeted rather, $1,591,000 rather. That is our projected budget for this coming year. So that $171,000 makes up 10% or 10.4% rather of that overall budget. Then you'll see over on the right, all of the combined totals that I just took you through. Our budget for this year, or our projected forecasted budget for this year rather, that $385,000 is about 24% of our overall church budget. I know those numbers don't necessarily go together, but we like to kind of look at them in that way just to say we are doing more than what we're budgeting. And so from a 10% tithe perspective, we're right there from a budget standpoint, but then our congregation, we all are very passionate about these missions and ministries, both globally and locally, and thank you for that. And this is what those numbers add up to. Thank you for your time. I've been Graham Brenna. I will take your questions in our live feed here or email. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rick Liebeck, and I've been the treasurer at Our Saviour since October of 2017. I'll be walking through the financial slides, including the operating and preschool budgets to be voted on by the congregation. The numbers have been prepared by the Finance Committee and reviewed by the Church Council. Let's start with the financial structure of the church. From a legal standpoint, Our Saviour's is one entity. From an accounting standpoint, there are 4 distinct funds with 4 separate bank accounts. Funds 1 and 2 are operating accounts with separate income statements and balance sheets. The preschool is funded via tuition, while the church is funded primarily by member giving. Funds 3 and 4 are both restricted accounts and are further separated because Fund 4, endowment, is permanently restricted, meaning the original gift dollars, the principal balance, may never be touched, so only the annual interest earnings are distributed each year to missions and scholarships based on the church bylaws. The message of this slide is we had a solid year financially in 2020, but we have challenges ahead in 2021. First, the happy news is in the green text. The church operations enjoyed a $287,000 net surplus, which allowed us to support missions and benevolence of $180,000, pay $184,000 of mortgage principal, and also fund $150,000 toward the capital projects reserve. Over and above the $287,000 surplus, we received $264,000 of Paycheck Protection Program funds, which will help ease the financial strain of COVID-19. The red text highlights 4 areas where the outbreak will challenge us in 2021 as we carefully and safely get back to operating at full capacity in person. First, we're budgeting a 6% drop in member giving due to a decrease in offerings usually received during worship services. Next, operations will lose out on $15,000 as summer camps were canceled. Cancellation of the mega garage sale will mean $24,000 less to support missions this year. Lastly, if the guidance for class sizes of 10 or less continues into the new school year, the preschool will lose out on tuition dollars. So speaking of the preschool, let's take a look at the income statement. Prior to the outbreak, preschool enrollment was essentially at capacity. So the tuition numbers aren't going to get significantly better than the 662,000 we see in the far right-hand column. On the other hand, if class sizes are limited to 10 or less, the preschool has $285,000 in cash, some of which may be used to overcome a short-term revenue loss. Long-term, the cost structure would need to be reduced, including compensation and benefits. Please note the first green row of $170,000, which highlights the cash transferred from the preschool to the church operating fund to cover shared costs, including the mortgage, utilities, repairs, and administrative expenses. $170,000 is 26% of the 662,000 tuition income. So 26 cents of every preschool tuition dollar is transferred to the church operating fund. Lastly, the $80,000 highlighted in green is the amount of the 264 PPP proceeds allocated to the preschool to cover teacher salaries. For the church operating budget, we'll focus on the two right-hand columns, which are this year's projected finish and next year's budget. Starting with the member giving row, the $100,000 decrease is the dollar amount related to the forecasted 6% drop. As we look through the remaining rows, the budgeted numbers are relatively close to the projected numbers, with the exception of 4 rows we'll review on the next slide, including compensation and benefits, which is the largest cost bucket at 54% of total revenue, highlighted in red. We operate most efficiently when this number is 50% or below. 54% is the maximum tolerable number in the upcoming year because we have the luxury of 184,000 PPP proceeds to cover staff wages. But again, 50% or lower is the ideal long-term benchmark. Down at the net row, 8% budget is lower than the 14% projected this year. Of that 6% decrease, 5% comes from compensation and benefits. This slide includes the 4 notable variances from the 2020 projected numbers to the 2021 budget. In the upper left-hand corner, we lost $38,000 of summer camp revenue, usually received in April through June, because the summer camps this year have been canceled. But for 2021, those dollars are back in the budget. Moving to the upper right-hand corner, there will be $9,000 less provided to our Saviour's missions and ELCA benevolence in 2021 as a result of the 6% member giving drop. In the administration expense box, there are 3 rows of investment in the IT area, including a website upgrade, an internet upgrade to fiber at both campuses to begin live streaming worship services, and upgrading Windows 10 for not only functionality but security. The fourth box includes 4 rows related to compensation and benefits, including a 20.4% increase in medical insurance costs. Moving from the income statement to the balance sheet, it's important to note we have a strong balance sheet, which is supported by feedback from our audit firm, Cape & Krause, our bank, Wintrust, and our mortgage lender, Thrivent Financial. Let's cover 2 quick items. The first green highlight is the 264 Paycheck Protection Program loan, which currently is classified as a liability, but once the 8-week forgiveness period ends, we will complete the forgiveness application through Wintrust, and there's nothing to suggest the loan won't be forgiven, meaning the liability will be debited off the balance sheet and an operating gain will be credited to the income statement. $80,000 of it will go to the preschool and $184,000 to the church operating account. The second green highlight of $654,000 in brackets is simply a shift of the mortgage liability from the restricted fund below to the operations fund above, which coincided with the dedicated Debt Free to Be campaign ending and the subsequent funding of the monthly mortgage payments directly from general operations. This is a 9-year historical look at the mortgage balance. The original $6.7 million note began in May of 2011, and over the years the balance has dropped nicely to where we're now at $842,000. If we make the regular $19,000 per month payments The loan will be paid off fully in September 2024. When we look at both campuses at once, Celebration has the $842,000 mortgage payments over the next 4.5 years, while the forecast for capital repairs at both facilities is $945,000 over the next 5 years, which Jim Harms will present in more detail. So combining the mortgage and capital repairs, we have $1.8 million to fund over the next 5 years, over and above our regular day-to-day operating expenses. This slide takes a look at market conditions in the church industry. The first 3 bullets are from the October 2019 Pew Research Center report, indicating from 2009 to 2019, although the population of U.S. adults increased by 23 million, the number of individuals identifying as being Christians dropped by 11 million. Plus, those attending church at least once per month dropped below 50%. In regard to our Saviors, our audit firm Cape & Krause recently reviewed our administrative processes, employee handbook, and financial metrics, and provided feedback that we follow best practices, and perhaps more importantly from a financial standpoint, we compare favorably to peer church benchmarks. Our financial outlook in 2021 is decent, provided member giving does not decrease by more than 6%. If it does, we'll have to adjust our cost structure accordingly, including compensation and benefits. After 2021, the forecast for the following 4 years shows our adjusted net row in red at the bottom of the page in negative numbers based on the assumptions in the right-hand column. For the sake of this exercise, member giving is assumed flat. Parking lot revenue increases each year as there is a CPI clause in the agreement with Edward Hospital. In the expense section, there are 3 rows impacted by inflation, while the assumption for the remaining cost rows is that we'll figure out a way to manage them to be flat. We can see the red percentages highlighted in the compensation and benefits row of 55% through 59% are all well above the ideal 50% level. This means without an increase in revenue, a decrease in this row is necessary to stay in alignment. Also, with no additional revenue, the $150,000 per year capital projects fund row would be a candidate for reduction, which would delay projects but save cash. Even if we are able to continue the $150,000 funding per year, we'll still fall short of maintaining an adequate balance in the capital reserve account to fund all of the projects that Jim Harms will present next. The goal is to have $100,000 or more in the capital reserve account at June 30 each year to ensure that there's enough funding for the next fiscal year's projects. We can see the $149,000 currently in reserve is in the green, and so is the $109,000 next June 30. But after that, we not only drop below $100,000 in 2022, but fall into the negatives in 2023 through 2025. Our Saviour's is financially healthy, but we also are in the midst of uncertain times. We will continue to align spending with revenue amid the challenges of inflation, capital repairs, and the ever-changing U.S. religious landscape. Thank you for taking time to listen to this financial presentation. We appreciate your consideration in reviewing and hopefully voting yes to the proposed preschool and church operations budgets for the upcoming fiscal year beginning July 1st. I will be available during the live Zoom meetings to answer any questions. And with that, I will now hand the presentation over to Jim Harms.
Hi, I'm Jim Harms. I'm the chairperson of the Church Property Committee, and today I'd like to give you a recap of what was approved for capital expenditures for the current fiscal year of the church, also what we were able to accomplish given the expenditures that were approved. After that, I'd like to take you through a journey of the next several years of expenditures and how we approach the planning specifically for next fiscal year. First, the overview of the current year. Between the congregation votes in June at the annual meeting and the secondary vote, which was a special vote held in January, the congregation you approved a total expenditure of capital for $471,500 for the current year. The money was targeted to several specific projects that I'd like to then also give you a recap of where we stand. The first and most major project was to replace the mechanical systems, the heating and air conditioning units, on the lower level of the roof over the 1990 expansion, which we call Roof K. We also recovered the entire area of Roof K with a brand new roofing, and it fixed all of the problems that had been identified as having had leaks. Another project, the one that was approved in January, was to repair and recover what we call Roof J, which is the roof over the Fellowship Center. That roof will likely be replaced in June. The city has now once again opened construction permits, and we now have our permit, and we have talked with our supplier, and they are targeted for doing the work hopefully in the second week of June. Some of the additional projects that we were able to achieve given the budget that was approved is we also reshingled the whole roof over the sanctuary, where we had several roofs and a lot of deterioration of the shingles on the roof. We also did an upgrade to almost all of the exterior lights at the church. These were replaced by LED lights, and in addition to the replacement of the light, we also put in automated timers so that the staff didn't have to manually change them on a monthly basis. Those timers are now actually controlled by an atomic clock. One thing I'd like to add to the accomplishments is I'd like to put in a special note of thanks to our DIY team. That group of gentlemen and people that have been working diligently for us on projects around the church has just been extremely special, and we are very fortunate for all of the skills and the talent that they bring to us. If you know people on that team, please thank them for what they've done. Now what I'd like to do is talk about the plan for next fiscal year, 2020 and 21. What we did is we reviewed the dollar planning for the capital plan for this coming fiscal year, given what we know could be some challenges in both the giving to the church and plus other expenditures we may have. So we're submitting for your approval today a budget of $190,000, which is lower than we originally had intended. In that budget, there are some projects that are specific to helping in the COVID-19 era that we've learned are needed. One of the major ones is we are looking at replacing our cable access for internet at both campuses with fiber optic capability. And in complement of that, then we're going to upgrade the phone systems, and we're also planning on the purchase of equipment that would enable live video recording and live communication of services and meetings where desired. One of the other elements that we've got is both for safety and for the attractiveness of the church. We're looking at replacing flooring in the public areas of the older church. Hopefully this will give us a more appealing area, and it will fix some of what we know to be safety issues where the seams and the carpet are just so worn we can no longer get them bonded and held in place. In addition to that, what we're looking at is to make sure that we can then also enhance the exterior, and based upon the new sign that we put up in front of the church, we do have a commitment to the city to do some enhancement of landscaping, and so you'll see a budget for landscaping. We would do the signs in both churches and especially around the area of the parking lot in front of the church at the old church. In the following years, beyond that, what you're going to see is again a revisiting of the amount of funding that we're projecting being needed, and the things that we're targeting are specific estimates for structural repairs and maintenance at both buildings, completion of the air conditioning upgrade at the old church. There are still several window units, and there's one roofing unit that will likely be needing to be replaced. We're also looking at the potential that we could have heating issues because of the old boiler systems that still heat a majority of the area of the old church. In addition, we're planning on enhancement of the sidewalks and the curbing at both campuses. So look for some of these to be planned for in the future meetings and discussed as we go through there. In close, what I'd like to do is encourage your approval of the budget as we're proposing it, and I'd like to thank you, the entire congregation, for the strong support that we've been able to have over the last several years and the accomplishments we've made in being able to eliminate many of the very severe structural and leakage issues that we'd had, especially at the old church. So once again, my thanks from the committee to all of you. And now I'd like to turn the meeting back over to Glenn for closing comments.
I want to thank you for your attendance today. I hope it was informative. And please remember to vote at the end of this call. A special thanks to Graham, Rick, and Jiren for their presentations. Thank you all, and God bless.